Hello again, it's Ryan from Better Tattooing. We're going to go on to another rule of thirds today, and we're going to talk about the rule of thirds with planes inside of a design. All right. Okay, now that that's over with. Planes of design. Many of you don't know what this is. Maybe you do. Maybe you just don't call it this. I don't know. I don't want to tell you what you do or don't know. I apologize. It's a Sunday, and I'm tired. Anyways, planes of design. What is this? This is where we're going to be looking at a design and judging the depth inside of the design. And we can start using different rule of thirds for each one of these, you know, different things when you start getting into more complex designs. And this is the middle difficulty one. It's not novice. So planes inside the designs, we have the foreground, midground, and background. Right? This is breaking your design into thirds. That's fun. If you want to go back and watch the other videos, we'll put links in something in this area. I don't know. But yeah, this is going to be the other thing that we need to pay attention to, especially when you start getting into more complex, like illustrative designs, or even things that are more realistic. And breaking these things into a thirds is kind of interesting, because when we think about foreground, midground, background, each one of these as well can have our previous rule of thirds, right? We have our third contrast values, right? Black, color/shading, skin highlights. And then when we start breaking these down even further inside of this, we have to think about the actual values applied within the design. When we have things that are a focal point, on average, they're going to be in our midground. So this is going to be the strongest point of our design. We're going to have elements that move in front of it or behind it, lead people through the design. And so those things, when they come into focus or out of focus, are always going to be variable. But the midground on average is going to be our base point when we're starting our design to establish how much detail everything else should have, right? So it's always going to have the strongest value when you hit to the midground. The foreground is always going to be a plus or minus from where the midground is, right? Because if it's moving in front of something, and we have a skull and there's some smoke or something that's moving in front of it, the amount of detail that's going to be coming over that element or aspect of the design is going to need to be of greater detail than the spots that we're actually wanting people to look at. It's going to end up framing it, right? Creating an area of interest where people are going to be able to find multiple things that are pleasing to the eye and give more detail and understanding to the piece at large that they're looking at. But when those foreground elements tend to move to the background, they're going to decrease in value in relation to that midground stuff that's there. It's kind of cool, right? And the background is always going to be less than. Well, why don't I actually use like the stuff here? Less than or equal to the strongest value that's located inside of the midground. Yeah, the midground of the design. I'm sorry, I'm always like, okay. There we go. That's more logical. The background is always going to be dipping in value, right? We don't want to put something behind something else that has a ton of detail into it, right? If you have something here and something here, you're going to be focusing on things in different ways where things will slip out of focus and into focus and back out of focus. It's just stereoscopic focus vision, right? So if we start putting a ton of detail into the background, it's going to get so convoluted that the image will flatten out and you end up competing for space visually with the person who's looking at it. It'll just be too much going on. It becomes busy, right? There's the second quote there. So that's something to pay attention to when you're doing your designs, right? This is the other third that we can get into. The last one is going to be actual tonal value. And our tonal value is going to be a bit different here, right? We're going to start with this as more of a neutral scale, right? If we have a neutral scale inside this, and this isn't like your chroma or values of actual color, we're just going to say that this, if we have the colors or shades that are going to be established in the midground are going to be considered like the basic, the zero, we can either move up or down that actual scale to try and create different values that will make the image more legible, right? If we go to the background, we're going to want to see a decreasing amount of value inside there. If something is really well saturated in the midground, the further off the distance that it gets, it should get lighter, right? So we're going to want to see decreasing detail, decreasing saturation of the color, et cetera, et cetera. Now, foreground kind of goes by the same rules as before, because depending on if you want something that's moving from the background and coming forward to actually become an area of interest or a focal point, it is going to do the same thing. It's either going to go increasing in the amount of contrast and saturation or decreasing depending on where it is in relation to your midground and focal points. Does that make sense? So we have 3 rule of thirds for our second rule of thirds, which is on planes of design. Does this make sense? I hope so. If it doesn't, leave some comments. We can always make extra videos to try and explain it more. Past that, like, subscribe, go to buy me a coffee, give us money. This is a lot of fun, but man, it takes a lot of time. It'd be good to get paid for it. I don't know, question mark. I don't want to sound like a cheapskate. I actually do really enjoy making these, and the comments we've gotten so far have been awesome. So thank you everyone who's been watching. I hope this helps, and until next time, this is Ryan from Better Tattooing, signing off.